episode 5.
Yep, we light the way.
We light the way. The words of the High Towers. So we're gonna kind of run through this, and honestly, I feel I really am going to try hard not to get so overjoyed at this this episode. It's my favorite one so far. I do think a lot of it has to do with the fact that episode 1 through 4 built up so well to this point. But we get this opening scene where Damon's wife, whose name honestly has slipped my mind. You don't happen to remember, do you?
Lena.
Okay.
Is that her name?
She's going on a horse ride. Just so everyone knows, this guy right here is going to come back later in a pretty great scene with Damon. I think it's definitely, there's so many high points in this episode, man.
It's a really good episode.
Yeah.
I think it's my favorite one so far, and I said that about episode 3, and then I said that about episode 4, and now I think it's this one.
So she's going on this ride, and runs into a hooded stranger. And
the troll room's going crazy. We're toxic now again.
Yep. So
runs into a stranger.
Yes, this is revealed to be Daemon Targaryen, who is the husband. And he's talked about his wife a few times in past episodes. I think she's gay, right? Isn't that the reason that it's a troubled relationship and they haven't, because she mentions that she's like, have you come back to consummate the marriage?
I didn't think it was because she was gay. I just thought he just didn't like her.
Maybe he was just saying that about her.
Maybe.
Maybe that's just like his way of manipulating. But I could have sworn that was the case. Anyway, so she goes. They start talking. He does. By the way, this is another one of those scenes where he doesn't say a word to anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can leave it alone. Let them deal with him.
Okay, I will.
Let's see here. So he starts doing, they're talking to each other, and he's just, this is how he is like the entire time, and I think it's really great. This is something that we've seen from Matt Smith quite a bit in this season.
One of the great things about this show that it had in common with Arcane 2 is that they say so much by just the body language. Mm-hmm. Not even using any words. Just the body language communicates what you need to know.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what happens here.
And it's really cool. He if Premiere will actually let me do this. So he starts moving towards her, right?
Right.
Now, do you know why? Like why this worked?
No, you tell me.
So they mention, I believe in the first episode, that the dragon riders smell like they're dragons when they get off their horses, and horses are, I guess, canonically a food source for dragons. So he knows exactly what he's doing, right? But you don't really know, like when you're watching the scene, it's not 100% clear what his intentions are, which is something that's always been the case for Daemon. He's a very he's like a firecracker. Like you never know when he's going to go off. And I just really like seeing that. She gets worried. So you get this little subtle look too, right? So he's here, he moves forward, and he's looking up. And she immediately goes for her bow. And you can tell she knows something's wrong.
Yeah, something's at play here.
Yeah. So the horse freaks out. You don't get a clear indication of exactly, because he's grabbing it right here, right? Yeah. You don't get a clear indication of what is happening in the scene, like what he's planning to do. And I think they keep it that way on purpose. Like, we do realize that because he's about to go pick up this massive rock, but you get to see the horse fall. I went on this part because they really.
I know, dude.
Yeah.
I thought it was we'll get to it when the scene calls for it. But yeah, when this happened, I was just like, all right, this is starting out tense. I like it.
And so he the horse gets up. She has broken her back, and he's still just standing there. Now she taunts him.
And it's so good too. She's being prideful in this moment, right? But it works. I don't even know if you call it pride, but the I'm better than you. I'm superior to you. You know what I mean? trying to outplay him, even though she's in this position.
Yep. So she keeps taunting her, like you were saying, like she's like telling him like, oh, you could never finish, like just really messing with his manhood, which has been alluded to in earlier episodes of the show. We got, everyone's favorite scenes from the previous episode with him and Rhaenyra. I saw that like endlessly. I cannot explain to you how many times I saw videos of people being like, oh my gosh, incest in Game of Thrones. And I'm like, y'all, did you watch the first episode of the original show?
Is this something new to y'all?
Yeah, like we knew this was a thing. These are the Targaryens who were known for that more so than anybody else. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. So
it's like I saw a comment online and someone was saying, yeah, my wife was really put off by it, and someone replied, yeah, well, it's only going to get more brotherly from here.
Yeah, it's not going to get it. It's not going to be any better. So Daemon is standing over her after she's been taunting him, and they he's like stepping on her arm, he's trying to figure it out, and
it looks like he's just going to leave her.
Yeah, and she goes, oh, you can't even finish the job, and he picks up this big rock, and then that's it, and that ends the scene. And we all know what happened based on that. Yep. And what a great way to start an episode.
Yep. Great editing too. They don't show him bashing her face in because it's not needed.
Oh, and we'll get plenty of that later on. I wonder if that was it was clearly a thought out decision. That's like, I'm not sure we can have 2 skull bashings in a single episode.
Oh man. That's great. There's a tip.
Yeah.
She just stands up. My spine's not broken any longer. Or he said he.
So we get the next scene of the Targaryens. They're headed over to see Corlys Velaryon. Because we found out at the end of the last episode that Rhaenyra is going to marry the son. And we're picking up with Viserys being in a very he's getting sicker. And it honestly, dude, it makes me sad on really, I guess, on 2 fronts. One, because I really like I was about to say Patty Jenkins again, Patty Constantine's acting, and I like the character. I like what they're doing with the character,
because he's really just he's his. I know there's more complexity to him than this, but his character really is simple in the sense that he's just trying to be a good king, a good husband, and a good father.
Absolutely. And I think that it does. I guess we're doing spoiler for the thing, but he does actually survive this episode because he's in the next episode, which made me really happy. I was happy to see that, and so you can kind of see it. He's got a new hand. From one of the characters that we haven't gotten to see.
I think we called it too. I think you did.
Did I?
I think you said, I think you said in episode 3 or 4 that he would probably be the next hand.
I think hang on. Let me go to my notes real quick to make sure. That's Lionel Strong.
Yes.
Okay, because Lionel and his 2 sons haven't had major roles in the show up until this point. Lionel's been in a few scenes, but nothing. He's kind of been a background character for the last 4 episodes. He's had I think 1 or 2 interactions with the cast, but not a ton.
But those few interactions were meaningful because you got to understand his intellect. You know what I mean? But nothing more. Like, it leaves you like, what's his motivation? Is it coming from a good place, or is it coming from a more manipulative place?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we don't know, because again, they're really it's cool to see that you're getting arcs for characters not completed, but coming into fruition. Like, you're starting to get the bloom from the seeds planted in the previous episodes with like Rhaenyra, Daemon, Kristen, not so much Otto, because he's only in this for a few minutes, and I think for me, Alicent's one of the biggest sort of moments. She gets a massive transition in this episode, which I think is really, really cool. So yeah, he's sick. It's hard. Obviously they're on this boat. The weather's not great, but you have to assume that part of the reason for this is that he is like sickly.
Yeah.
He's been fighting this battle with this unknown disease or whatever it is for years at this point. So yeah, this is that first kind of big moment where you get to see the hand on Lionel. And I don't know if there's much else to this part. You get to see a shot of Rhaenyra and Kristen, which we'll get to. The two of them are going to some big stuff coming in that, which was really good. Some good payoff coming. You also get this one scene with Otto and Alicent, and I definitely want to hear what you thought about this. This is definitely, I'm probably going to say this a lot. This is one of my favorite scenes in the episode because of what it sets up for that completion, where Alicent goes from being, like we were talking about in episode 4, a very innocent, very naive girl, to beginning to understand the world that she lives in and the potential role that she's going to have to play.
Yep.
Yeah, the people around her, and if you will, the way that the game works.
Yep, politicking.
Yes, and Otto understands this, and he obviously cares about her, but I love that it's very stern, because the entire point of this situation is like Rhaenyra is going to take the throne. Your heirs are in contrast to her heirs. You either need to usurp her or beg for her not to slaughter your children. Yep. And it's so direct. It's so to the point. Yes, and it's so good because these are those moments, right, where
and it works because of who Alicent was prior to this. It's not they're not just telling the audience things to tell them. You've got to spend time with both of them. You've seen Alicent and how naive she is, everything we just said, and then it's, hey, you need to get together and either usurp her or beg for her mercy, but you got to rise up to the occasion now. Daddy's not here to protect you.
Yes. Yeah, he's on his way out, and you can tell, I mean, like, it hits her pretty hard. And he cares. And this is something that we've talked about in past episodes, in other stuff that we've reviewed. There's a lot of lifelessness to other shows when it comes to the acting and even in serious moments. But, Rhys, what is his last name? Ifans. Rhys Ifans. He does a really, really good job of playing those emotions into his character. You get this character, like, you can see it on his face that he cares about his daughter despite this horrific thing he has to tell her, because he's the reason she's in this position.
Yep.
He probably screwed up. It's not clear if Rhaenyra was just that final, like, tipping point to get him essentially fired as being the hand, or if it was just built up and Viserys knew it and finally got rid of him. But he knows.
I mean, they have done, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they've done a good job of massively or changing the person's character in an episode from what they were. Like Viserys, this whole time you're thinking, okay, well, maybe he doesn't see and understand everything that's going on. And then was it the last episode?
Yeah.
To where it just pushing, it was last episode. And he's like, been seeing what Otto's been doing, even Rhaenyra, and just calls them all out. And it's like, yeah, good for you. Good job, writers.
And it's why it's so funny that all of the stuff happening around the outside of this show with Sapochnik trying to interject all of his, like, modern day politics or whatever the case may be into the show. It's all of that stuff that he's talking about. It doesn't make a lot of Sapochnik's talking about on outside of the show. You don't see what he's talking about, right?
Right.
Because it's like, I think he mentioned something about this, like, being a feminist story, but at the same time, it's like Rhaenyra's kind of a terrible person. Alicent's naive, and we've only gotten them as children, so no one in this. And we got to talk about that Kristen, the Sir Kristen Cole thing later on. And the dynamic between her and Rhaenyra in that scene, because I'm getting mixed messages from the showrunners versus what the show is telling me, and it makes me wonder, did did they know what they were making? Like, did the showrunners just kind of go like, all right, writers, do your thing. Martin is involved with the show.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. And they're just like there to get their talking points out for the general audience, I guess.
I'm wondering if it's the James Bond situation to where all the trailers were more appealing to a leftist ideology to kind of hit those check boxes in the media. And so I wonder, but when you actually got the movie, was it necessarily that way? And I wonder if like the marketing is, hey, or the interviews is, hey, let's just say it's this, but in reality, it's not actually that. It's just so that they can write a good story. But
yeah, it gets
you get what I'm saying? You get what I'm trying to say? Like trying to blur the line some.
Well, that's why we were always talking about like Hollywood being so fake with everything that they do.
Yeah,
is that they seem to. The showrunners for this. And Sapachik's gone. He's done after this season, like we've talked about in the past.
I think is a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing.
But man, it's so funny to watch this and see how horrible people are, and then be like, "Are you sure that you saw the message you think you did in this show?" Because I don't think everyone's picking up on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, great moment. It's the only time we see Otto in the episode. And I think,
I think I told you too when we were discussing this last time. Even if that's what they were meaning it, they leave it open enough to where you can go either way, which is fine. Mm-hmm. I think, hey, we meant it to be this way, but I think that subtle writing is a good thing to do.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see Otto throughout the rest of the season because I imagine his stake in everything going on is going to get elevated. Mm-hmm. Later on, especially after Viserys dies.
Yeah.
Because we're all, I mean, it's headed that way. Like,
you
want to talk about, like, it's not even foreshadowing at this point. Like, you could probably say it was in the first episode. That's the direction it's headed in. And so, yeah, they have their little talk. And I think this is one of Alicent's, like, best scenes so far, too, because she really gets more range of emotion than she has in... And a lot of stuff doesn't have to be said. Like, this is what we keep talking about when we're going back and forth between Rings of Power and this show, is that the acting in particular is on a completely different level because they don't have to constantly tell us how they're feeling and why things are going on, because the show is asking us to be a little bit smarter in trying to pay attention. And honestly, I miss things, and I'm fine with that. There's moments of little things going on where I'll hear someone be like, "Oh, did you catch that?" And it's like, "No, I didn't see that." It's like, that's really cool that they did that.
Exactly. I think that's what distinguishes a good show from a great show, is when you have to go back and keep watching it because there's things that you miss. You know what I mean? And it pulls you back into where you want to go back and see it, in order to have these conversations with other people. One of the things, if that scene was written by the writers for the Rings of Power, Alicent would have screamed, "No, don't leave, I'm so sad."
Yeah. What am I supposed to do without you? How am I supposed to defend everyone? And what's so great, and we'll get to it, is that she figures it out.
Yep.
She doesn't have to tell us our plan. You kind of start to think like, oh, maybe there's something, and we'll get to the moment because it
leaves a mystery there, right? You gotta, right, without it actually being a mystery box or a vision or anything.
It's just the plot.
If we get
is
one more
along.
Daggum mystery box in this show.
So they're on the island. Of course, Viserys is still kind of doing his thing. He's not feeling well. I think he even falls down right here. And Corlys is not there to greet them. It's just his son,
which is perfect for his character too.
Yes, someone who we will find out later is called the Knight of Kisses.
I wonder what that could mean.
It was so on the nose. I love it.
Isn't that your username?
Yes, the Knight of Kisses. I'm gonna change it. We'll just change our channel name to the Knights of Kisses.
No.
So yeah, he's not there. This is pretty basic, but at the same time, you understand Corlys isn't there. He knew he was coming. He's clearly, it's a power play because he knows who is in control of this situation. And it's great. And this is the first time in the first episode, and we'll get into the scene a little bit, but Corliss finally gets to shine in an episode for the most part. Like he's
finally.
really just been a background character, and I've kind of been waiting to see like, okay, what are they going to do with him? How's the
I've
guy
been wanting
gonna...
to see more of him.
Yeah.
Because I think, if I remember correctly, he's supposed to be this great naval commander, and it'd be nice to have, which I'm sure maybe we'll get later in the season, but it'd be nice to have some scenes of that.
Yeah, I really like the scene too, because everyone is thinking about that callback to the episode where Viserys and her are in the garden together when she's like 12.
And he's like, "What the? You want me to marry a 12-year-old?"
Yep. And it's so interesting, the things that you can read from it, because it's not only that, but you have to wonder if he's thinking about, did I make the wrong call for the kingdom?
Yeah.
Because look at where we're at now. Look at the situation we found ourselves in because I essentially chose love over duty.
Yep.
It's kind of an interesting
that.
dynamic. Yeah. So and this is one of those other things, they're going to be shooting around to all of the sort of like love interests in the episode. The camera work is quite good in this too, because it's very intentional who they're shooting, where how they edit them together. It's great, man. I love that, and it's something we've talked about since the beginning of the season. But just all of the like looks that people give, those like sly looks, or there's a great one with Rhaenyra and one of the Lannisters later on in the episode. It's so good, man.
And the details in this show too, like the outfits and the costumes and the armor.
Her wig is better in this one.
Yep.
This looks way better than it did, with the child actress that they had playing that role.
It's funny, I thought that what's the dude's name she marries? Laenor or whatever?
Yeah.
I thought his in one scene looked particularly bad. Only in one scene, though. Other than that, it looks good in this. But yeah, hers is definitely way better. Doesn't look as fake. And what's that supposed to be, like a weeping willow tree or something?
So it's I can't remember the exact name, but this is the Godswood in King's Landing, and maybe someone in the troll room knows the exact name of the trees. It's slipping. Maybe it's the God's trees. I don't know. Maybe it's a little that on the nose.
Does the blood, or not blood, but the sap coming out of the eyes indicate anything?
No, I think it's more. It might, but I can't remember. But the indication of the trees is that where the trees are, it's like where the three-eyed raven can see everything that's going on in Westeros.
Yeah, that's right.
And so everyone kind of keeps making this joke that like Bran's just like watching the show, because that's he sees like everything, and it's the were trees maybe.
Yeah,
I think maybe they're called the were trees. Is that right? Did you look it up?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Well, anyway. This is another great moment with Alicent and I thought
the tree. No, I'm just kidding.
And Larys.
It's Lord Coriolis' son.
Yeah,
right.
Larys. So there's lots of L names in this
what's
show.
The Lord Strong's son?
Yes, Larry Strong, and Alicent. And I can't remember. Did I write down? Doesn't matter. But this is such a great moment too, because. And this is where you're starting to get some of that real like Game of Thrones stuff going on, where he's over here, he's looking at this this flower,
right?
And he's saying something along the lines of what is it? It's like the lines slipping.
It's some kind of plant, and he's like it
doesn't belong.
Only grows
here.
in Essos, and it doesn't belong here. Yet it's blooming anyway. Nature is quite interesting, in a reference to
her,
Alicent.
Yes, and it's really cool to get some stuff like that, because you're getting some of those characters that are like some of the more manipulative characters coming into the show, I think, which he's really set himself up to be, and that the characters who seem to have some sort of like whether they're cripple or have some sort of disadvantage from the healthier characters in the show, they tend to be a little bit smarter, they tend to be craftier, and it's not a good idea to trust them. And it's a lot of the time that's just a clear indication of those personality traits, which I think is kind of an interesting way to do that. It's like you see someone that looks like that, and you're immediately like, "Ooh, what's this guy up to?" And I like that.
Yep, it gives some. You see some bad qualities and a redeeming quality just in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect.
And so, they have their conversation about kind of her place in all of this.
And how he's learned to, even though he's not in the room with people going on, how to be more observant to things. And then that's when because he's been observing Alicent, he brings up what are they called? The maestros bringing...
The maesters. Oh,
the maesters
yes.
bringing the tea to Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
And he's like, but he does it in a way, is she okay? Is there anything wrong with her?
Yep. Very clever. It's a really sly move, and that's when you realize, like, and it's one of the first indications, and this is what leads to the scene. I don't think it's right after this, but with Kristen and her, with Kristen and Alicent. And that, man, talk about another great moment. You have, so yeah, that's mostly what happens in this. We're really just setting up her for later on in the episode. She's slowly starting to realize that maybe she doesn't have what she needs to survive in King's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's showing her how naive she was in the previous episodes. Yeah. She's the queen. Everything's fine. She's married. She's got these kids. Like, Rhaenyra's going to take over. Her and Rhaenyra are cool. But then she gets this first information where it's like, Rhaenyra's going to slaughter your children.
Yeah.
It's like, don't make the mistake that she won't. And I like that because Otto seems to be aware of the history of those kind of things, like how the world that they live in works, whereas she doesn't.
The reality of it.
And he finally has to be honest with her about that. And you get someone else who has their own agenda, whatever it happens to be, we don't know yet, doing the same thing. Okay, so what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, then we go to this scene with him and Lord Corlys, and that's when they, come to an agreement regarding the marriage between Rhaenyra and Laenor. And basically, Lord Corlys is like, I'm fine with it as long as their children get to take up my name, which is Westeros tradition. And he said, and that's when King Viserys says, yep, I'm fine with that. But when they become the king, then they take on the Targaryen name, king or queen.
Yeah. And I want to mention, too, before we keep going, I'm really into the design of this place. Mostly because, so I imagine that if you are deep into the lore, you kind of know what's going on in the room and why it's designed the way that it is, but there's kind of the mystery behind it, like why you would have the skull. Like, you could make assumptions about why he's got these specific skulls, whether that's they're resemblant of the conquests that Corlys has had, or if it's like tradition to remember the dead, or whatever the case may be. I think it's really cool just to have like all these little design details, like we've talked about in the past with Viserys' miniature castle, or his miniature King's Landing. I think it's pretty cool. And we see it later, but over in this corner, he has the mask of Mr. Krabs.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot the guy's real name.
I missed that.
Yeah, because we keep calling him Mr. Krabs.
Yeah, that's his name for sure. Just like that guy's Arf Arizon's son's name is now Kevin. Oh, man. You know what? They need to hire the House of Dragon writers who, in the first episode of season 2, they just kill off all these useless characters. But no, that's a really nice touch, having that just simply right there in the background. As far as Mr. Krabs thing.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying I wonder if he clearly has certain items that are valuable to him because they're conquests.
Yeah.
Because he's a conqueror. Like, a lot of his personality is wrapped up, and it's such a good moment because I think he talks about it's coming up, and I wanted to mention it. He talks about with his wife, the Veneri. No, do you remember her name?
Rhaenyra?
No, it starts with I'm pretty sure it starts with a V, right?
No, I don't think so.
Is it Rhaenyra? Because it's Rhaenyra and Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
So they have a conversation where you get a really good indication. He doesn't outright say what he wants, which is why the writing in this is really good. He basically gives you this understanding of sort of like his dreams and what drives him. And a lot of it has
Rhaenys is her name.
Rhaenys. Yeah. A lot of it has to do with what happened to his wife. So one of the reasons that one of his big motivations is his wife. And it's a great moment because you know that now going forward. So a lot of the actions that he's taking are essentially like, oh man, like he's really pissed that she got looked over for
Yep.
the throne, despite her being pretty logical and practical. Be like, well, that's not the world that we live in. It's not a surprise that I was looked over, but he's like, I don't care. And so it makes you wonder if some of the drive behind everything that he's been doing since then, so his conquests, everything that he, teaming up with Daemon, if all of that is very much just like he's what he calls justice. And I think it's an interesting play on that, because you get to see, and this is what I was talking about before with the showrunners having this sort of idea of what they think the show is and what they think they're saying with the show and what the show is actually telling us. And this idea that his moral point of saying, like, I want justice for the fact that you were overlooked, potentially in the future, probably not in this season, could be his downfall.
Yeah.
Could be one of the things that completely, he's powerful. It drove him to accomplish as much as possible. He's richer than everybody else in the area, even the Lannisters. But he that potentially is also his weakness. That pride and arrogance in
your greatest strength generally speaking, is also your greatest weakness.
Yeah.
It's a paradox.
Yeah, and I noticed that, and I was like, this is really good. And it goes back to like, I don't think the showrunners know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Because you could interpret that in a modern sense, and it's just like, nah, dude, I don't think so, because they don't seem to understand that it's like these characters have major flaws as well. Mm-hmm. And like you were saying, like his strength might turn out to be a weakness for him as well,
right?
Because he's essentially blinded by revenge, if you will.
Yep.
Okay, so we get the scene with Corlys' son Lionel. No,
Laenor.
Laenor. Thank you. A lot of L's in this show.
Yeah.
And their very vague talk
about a goose and a duck.
Yes, and Laenor's preferences in that situation.
Yeah. You prefer duck, don't you? Yeah, he does. She prefers.
No, I think it was the other way around. I think she was
okay.
saying he likes goose and she prefers duck.
That's right.
And duck is too greasy,
Yeah.
And it's interesting, right? Because she's setting this up because she's aware of it and knows what she wants and what he wants, and that this marriage is essentially just to keep things civil.
Yep. Just to keep things civil, to strengthening their hold on the, what am I looking for? Dynasty, right?
Yes, on the Targaryen dynasty, essentially. Because that was, I think you had mentioned that, but that's one of the things that Viserys and Corlys were talking about, that it's their children will take the name Valerian, but whoever ascends the throne will take the Targaryen name.
Yep.
And she thinks she's getting everything she wants. Here's that shot of the Mr. Krabs' mask.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
Thinks she's gonna get everything that she wants. This is the scene that I was talking about where Corlys he wants essentially justice for what happened to his wife, and because he cares about her. I mean, you get that.
Yep.
We get a little that I appreciate what they did here because of what happens later. So you're getting I guess it probably was obvious that this was the case. We don't find out that his name is the Knight of Kisses until this scene, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
But they set up their relationship, and it's important because it affects what happens later in the episode, and potentially some stuff that happens down the line.
Going to happen later on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't know. That's what's so
definitely
cool.
will.
Is that we don't exactly know how all of these actions of characters in the show will ultimately affect what's coming next. And I really like that. It's nice to be able to kind of speculate without it just being like, oh, it's just more mysteries. But it's like, okay, how are the actions of characters going to affect different people later down the line? And I appreciate it. Yeah. Speaking of, and there's a big contrast in this episode between the two main couples, I guess, in the show, if for lack of a better way of putting it, and how they kind of contrast with each other. And I really liked this moment because, essentially Sir Kristen Cole is asking Rhaenyra to run away with him. And what did you think about when she because she responds and she's basically like, well, I have a duty now.
Yeah.
And his response, do you remember what it was?
No, I don't remember. Refresh my memory.
He goes, what am I, your whore?
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like, dang, man. And it works really well. Huh?
It's spot on.
Yeah. And
you don't want to have me in front of everyone. You just want to keep me in secret.
Yes. And it's such an interesting power dynamic because you get to see it. I wouldn't say it totally recontextualizes. And was it the previous episode where they sleep together?
Mm-hmm.
I think though it's really interesting that you get to see the way Rhaenyra's personality works versus his personality.
Yeah. Because
she sees things very practically is not the right word. In a more
realistic, dutiful way. Duty. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying though. He's more bent on love, yes. Right?
And you could say, I say practicality, but I don't mean that as her being a practical person because she does a lot of dumb things
She's more caring about fulfilling her responsibilities now.
And she's selfish, I guess would actually be the best way to put it, because everything really is about her.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, where she's like, I want you, but I want you the way that I want you.
Not the way that you want
this. Yep. Yeah. It's just like a really good moment. And this, I was, as someone who hasn't read this set of books, and they don't, as far as I know, they don't go into it. This scene was really cool because I honestly wasn't expecting this to be kind of like that turning point. I really wasn't expecting this.
Yeah.
I thought maybe the two of them were going to stay pretty tight even into the future. Mm-hmm. But to have this moment where like this conversation is essentially what leads him to walk away from her. And his like all of that emotion is like welling up in him that we get to see later on. Yeah,
and it also makes sense why he's walking, why he feels comfortable enough to walk away from her too.
Yeah, and they
because of their relationship.
Yeah, they get to shoot. What was I going to say? Anyway, yeah, he walks away, and this has consequences, which Rhaenyra, I think we get to see potentially understanding a little bit better later on. We'll get there, but yeah, just great acting with the cast, and then let's see. Okay, let's get to this part because I think this is a very important scene, right? So you have this moment where he has basically just gotten broken up with, like their relationship has fallen apart, and he's realized everything that he put forward. Because I think he mentions to her as well. Oh, that was the other thing. He mentions to her, because we weren't 100% sure in the last episode whether the King's Guard took an oath of chastity or if it was just marriage.
Yes, and he said that he did.
And it's an oath of chastity, which also means that they can't get married.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, awesome. I'm glad that they put that in there. And, he clearly cares about his honor. He clearly cares about the way that he's risen through the ranks because it's all that he has. I even heard someone mention, because I didn't notice this, in episode 4 when Rhaenyra is taking off his armor right before they consummate, she takes off his like armor and she's tossing it on the ground like it's no big deal, and he actually takes the time to take his cloak and fold it up and put it on the table, which is like this little detail of like who he is as a character.
That's
and
a good
I was
point.
like, dang, man. I was like, I'm glad someone caught that, because that is so, it's those little things, right? And then
it is the details. That's one of the things when we've been reviewing this show, the love and care and the passion for this comes through in the little details. That's the complete opposite of the Rings of Power.
Oh,
the details aren't there.
Yeah. And so
in a genuine and organic way, everything feels forced.
Yes. And so he gets called by the queen, and you're like, ooh, what's this about? And she vaguely is describing the incident between Daemon and Rhaenyra. And let's see if I can find the shot. There's like he's real tense, right?
Yeah. When I enjoyed when he's the communication of his anxiety, because he's just grabbing his hands like this when she gets up and walks towards the window. And I'm like, that's great body language communication of how anxious he is, along with everything else.
Yeah, you get to read the emotions. And what's so funny is like the way that I was kind of reading this is it's the same look that like when you were a kid and you got sent to the principal's office.
Oh, yeah.
And he has this, he's very uncomfortable. He has really no power in this situation as far as he's concerned. And I also think it's interesting because you could argue that these are the two most naive characters in the show at this point in the show. He thought that the situation with with Rhaenyra was completely different than it was, and Alicent just thought her entire life was something that it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think it works really well. And so she's doing what a lot of people do in sensitive situations, which may also be somewhat of that naivety of where she doesn't understand how to approach these things properly, and she's trying to be very sensitive about the situation because she cares about Rhaenyra still.
Yep, and she doesn't want any accusation to get back to Rhaenyra, and because of the previous setup of the scene and the conflict they had in episode 4 when she accused Rhaenyra lightly, I would even might add, but he finally ends up just confessing, and it's interesting because I wasn't necessarily expecting Alicent to get as upset with Rhaenyra as she was. I mean, to an extent, I understand, but it's still not. She still doesn't know it's true that her and Daemon basically somewhat hooked up, right?
Right. So what's interesting though is I think it gives more credence to that. So
yeah.
The thing that was in question and the thing that Rhaenyra specifically lied about. It was the Daemon situation.
Right.
And then she avoided the question of her maidenhood. And so Alicent in this moment is now realizing she wasn't telling me the truth. She's been soiled. Yeah. What else is she lying about? Was she lying about the Daemon stuff?
Yeah.
Just very, very interesting. And then, she realizes it and like she's just sitting there going like, oh my, like,
oh, that chick lied to me.
Yeah, the look on her face, she's just like, all the stuff and all of those conversations are coming back to mind.
And then he's like, hey, I just basically asked for in my death, be merciful, make it quick.
Yeah, and which is so cool because it shows kind of who he is. Yeah, he's like, the only thing I ask is for a merciful death rather than torturing me beforehand. And you're like, dang, man. Because he knows the situation he's in. And she lets him go. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, that makes sense. It's like, what's her game, though, with that?
Yeah, she has the upper hand in the situation.
And maybe it's some of that innocence and the fact that she seemingly is a little bit more caring than the rest of the characters in the show. Her willingness to basically be like, Sir Criston, you can leave.
Yeah.
And maybe it is because, okay, he might be useful later.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Maybe doing this act, I could win him over to my side. Great scene here because we get another scene of the Maestros, the head guy saying no to the concoction that the other Maestro, is that how you say it?
Maester.
Okay. Maester. So Maester, the lesser Maester had made some kind of concoction saying, hey, this would help. And I believe it was in episode 1 to one of the other ones did something similar, and the main Maester rejected it and rejected it again here and was just like, leeches comforts his grace.
Yeah.
And then the lesser Maester gives that concoction to put the king to sleep to Lord Strong. And so interesting.
And that's one of the biggest running theories is that the Maesters are poisoning him because they don't like the Targaryens.
Yeah.
Because they find them to essentially be vile because of the practices of their ancestors. So great conversation here.
Oh man, I love this conversation so much because you see he's so concerned with, I want to be a good king. And he's like, but I've never done anything great, but I've also never done anything terrible. I haven't lost any major battles, but I haven't won any major battles either.
Yeah.
Right? I haven't done any of these grand things, but I haven't done these horrible things. And then he's like, I wish I would have been tested. and Lord Strong says, those who have been tested would say different, and
yeah, and
such a good line.
Excuse me, it's an interesting. I'll just say foreshadowing, or it's an interesting callback to the original series and what happened to people like Robb Stark, who got the calling, was an incredible leader and a good king by all accounts, but it cost him his life and the life of his family.
Yeah.
And so everyone probably had different kind of thoughts about that scene, especially if they've watched the show before. But I really like Paddy Constantine.
I know.
He's top three, man.
He is. I think he's my favorite.
My top three hasn't changed. I can't put him in any kind of order yet.
The characters are so good. It's hard for me to decide between him, Otto, Damon, and Rhaenyra and Alicent. Now in this episode.
Yep. So yeah, he goes through that entire thing, and like you were saying, Lionel tries to comfort him, and it just. Is
it Lionel?
Yes.
Okay.
Lionel Strong.
Lionel comforts him, but he's honest with him, and King Viserys appreciates that about him. He said, if it was anyone else, they would have told me, you've done all these great things, yada, 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 but I appreciate your candor.
And he knows, and it's probably because Lionel knows that at this point, Viserys is not going to, he knows when people are like screwing with him, because he's got to be aware of why Otto got dismissed.
Yeah.
So you get another shot. So like, let's talk about this for a second, because we tend to harp on like CG and stuff in Rings of Power sometimes. I really like this. I think it's you weren't going to be able to do this practically.
Yeah.
I think everything looks quite good.
Unless they just built their own fleet of ships. I mean, they could have done that.
And I try not to get excited over like the dragons flying in, but there's just that part of me that's like, oh, you're just getting at that like
just enough.
Yeah, I don't know what the best term would be for it. It's like that caveman brain where you're like, ooh, dragon.
Yeah. Ooh, fire, it burns.
Yeah, they're flying in with the big
bomb goes boom.
Yeah, because it's nothing. I mean, when you really break down the shot, it's some dragons flying in and the ships, but they do it quickly. It doesn't last for a very long time, and you just get that little taste, and I'm cool with that. And so this is the wedding. They're introducing everyone. This is the scene I was talking about with House Lannister coming in.
Yeah.
He hasn't been in the show much, and to say the show doesn't have like a sense of humor to some degree would be a lie, because this character in particular was one that was trying to get Rhaenyra to marry him in episode 3, I believe, when they're out doing the hunt, and it's Aegon's second birthday. And he comes up and I can't remember what the exact phrase is said. He said like a great match or something like that. And Rhaenyra says something about like it being the best match. And it's just that little bit of callback to the previous episode where she's taking a dig at him for him like trying to make those like advancements on her. And I think this is where she gives him this like this look. Where is it? Oh, it's right here. Wait. Right here. She's just like, oh, brother. And I like that stuff. It's the people acting in this show do so much work with just facial expressions.
It was so good too when he asked, where's the queen? And he said, she's still getting ready. And then what was the comment he said about women? He made some comment about women.
Yeah. It said, this is why women don't make good rulers, because they'd be late to every battle or something like that.
Yeah, something to that extent. And what was it that Rhaenyra said? That I know the king just looked at him and just smiled, and then I forget what Rhaenyra said, but it was just a great scene because you could just tell they're just both rolling their eyes at him.
Yeah, it's right here.
Just suffering him.
Yeah. Okay, this is Gerald Royce, who will come into play in a few minutes. And one of the... I'll wait till we get to the Daemon thing, because I can't gush over Daemon too much.
He's Lena's uncle. Daemon's wife, uncle, or cousin?
Cousin.
Something like that.
Damon and his late wife's cousin. Yeah, it's what I wrote down. That might be wrong, but I think that's right. So everyone's kind of coming in. They're doing their like platitudes towards the king. And
it is cousin.
The Valerians come in. Another great. This shows the pride of the house. Like all of this stuff is very intentional, and it's one of the reasons it works so well for me. Because you're getting the personalities of the groups as well as the individuals in a lot of these scenes, and this just adds to it. It's this big moment for the two of them, and I think that it's cool that despite how sort of political this whole marriage is, everyone's sort of like, for now, in good. What was I going to say?
Graces, right? Well, good standing.
Yeah, they're all happy. They're all kind of like. It's a good moment for everyone. All the feasting, and they were talking about how they're going to talk about how the wedding events will last a week. And there'll be a jousting competition,
7 days,
food. Yeah. So they're going through the whole thing, and there's a whole night of kisses, Lord kisses, and in walks
the man, just
the myth,
still
the legend.
The show every time he arrives without saying anything.
He oozes every time he's on the screen. I'm sorry, guys. It's. I think the lack of character work this year in shows has made this. I'm probably overhyping it some. I'm looking forward to this being done and then going back and getting to watch it again to see if it still works for me.
Yeah.
But they've done such a good job setting up his character as. Every time he's there, there's going to be some mischief. Something's going down.
He steals the show.
He does. Every time he's on the screen. And he deserves all of the high marks that he gets in this. So, comes in. I'm not even sure he says anything, right? He looks at everyone. They get him a chair, and he goes and he sits down in the corner. And he's playing the game, man. And we still aren't 100%. We know he wants Rhaenyra. I think that's still pretty much clear, and that might be one of his biggest driving motivations in the show right now. That's his goal, and he wants to get it any way that he can. And it's interesting because, and I don't remember her name. Do you remember what their daughter's name is?
I have no idea. I'll go back and check.
If you want to check for me. Sorry, so many characters.
There's a ton of characters.
They're gonna have it gets confirmed in the trailer for the next season, but they're going to have a relationship, Damon and her.
Yep.
And I imagine that's who he remarries. So everybody's kind of looking around. The king starts giving a speech about the wedding, and everyone stops because they hear the doors open up, and in walks Alicent.
Lady Lena Valerian.
Oh, man. So you've got Lena.
Yep, Lena. That's her name. I won't remember. There's so many.
Lionel.
Yeah.
Are there any L's that I'm
missing? Rhaenyra.
Larys, who is Lionel's son. It's a lot.
George R. R. Martin, his names.
It's cool, man. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's fine.
Anyway, so we get another great moment. Again, I think that Alicent, to a degree, steals a lot of these scenes. She's been excellent in this specific episode. I think it's probably the best work that the actress has put in, which is good considering this is the last one.
Yep, and it's right in the middle of his speech. And she's also wearing green, which before this we were told was...
It's actually in the scene.
Oh, it's in the scene where we get told what that means?
Let's see. So everyone's standing up. He knows exactly what's going on, which is really cool because before we even get told what it means, he knows something's off.
Yep.
And she's coming in. She's not smiling at all. Everyone stands for her, and it's this moment right here. These two, I believe, are the ones talking about it.
Yep.
These are the brothers, by the way. which I actually didn't catch at first. I mean, I knew him, but I didn't realize that this was his brother.
I didn't know that until you just told me.
Yeah, he's the one that when we get to the big
Brawl.
moment in the episode, yeah, he's the one who goes in and he's like just taking dudes out to go save Rhaenyra. And I can't remember. Did I write his name?
I wonder if
down?
he's going to become her new Kingsguard.
I didn't write his name down. I'll have to go look it again. Anyway, so she comes in. This is the part where it's like what green means for what happens when the high towers light the green flame.
Mm-hmm.
And
that means war.
Yeah, and it's just it's one of those things that like we all knew it was coming, and I was trying to think if there was a more subtle way for them to have introduced that as a plot point. And I really couldn't think of anything. That's why I was kind of fine with it.
Harwin Strong is his name.
Harwin.
His nickname is Break Bones.
Yeah. At least he doesn't have another L name.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, good job, Lionel. Get your sons all confused too, I'm sure. So she comes in. Everyone's like, there's a little bit of tension. You get that little bit of tension from her because you know something's going on. And it's interesting where the dynamic has turned because I think was it the previous episode where it was sort of reversed, where Rhaenyra was pretty much upset with her, and the dynamic was like, you married my father. That was weird. We were supposed to be close. And then in this time, it's like she's the one who's kind of the power dynamic is kind of, it's shifted in her direction. It's pretty cool. So yeah, they get back to, all of the festivities, everything's going on. Is there anything else in here that's like crazy important that we need to talk about?
Not
I know
really.
One of the more important, so they all start dancing and
Kisses goes up to
yes,
Sir Kristen Cole and says, "Hey, I know your secret." And they end up knowing each other's secret because tells them, and then he goes back up to freaking Laenor and tells him, "Hey, it's a good thing that you know her secret and she knows yours because now you're on an equal playing field."
Yes. So this is the scene that I've been alluding to for most of the episode that it's very good, where Gerald Royce goes up to Daemon and he essentially says, in the Vale, people answer for their crimes, even Targaryens. And I think his response is, "Who are you?"
Yeah, he says, "What? Who are you?"
Yeah. And they have this little back and forth, and Daemon basically responds with false allegations are handled seriously in King's Landing, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And there's just kind of this back and forth, and he and I think he tells him that that he's the cousin.
Yep.
And
he asks about,
he's like, "Oh,
does it
brother,
Runestone fall to me now since she doesn't have an heir?"
Uh-huh.
And it's just a perfect play.
His face. He's like, "Please don't kill him."
Yeah. Oh, you never know exactly what Damon's going to do just because of how the mischief he plays and how he plays the game, and could just really great characterization, keeping the audience on edge with his motivations and intentions and exactly what he's thinking in each scenario.
And I like this too because you find out afterward when he's talking to Rhaenyra that he's probably armed, because he like always is, because she's like, they have a whole conversation about like why he doesn't just take her back to Dragonstone, and she's like, you're armed, go take out the Kingsguard and take me away. So it's a little bit of that context for Daemon's character. And again, he's like, "Oh," it's like, "Dude, go away, like stop, you don't know what you're
that's
doing."
Probably the next thing we can get to from here is his interaction with Rhaenyra, because I enjoyed it. They hold it.
Yes, it is pretty much right away. We do have to talk about this because this is that moment where you're starting
slight love interest there, or
a power play,
lust.
We'll find out for sure. Yeah. That's a good point.
That is.
Tyler in the troll room says, "The fact that Daemon mentioned the inheritance is also kind of a subtle admission of the accusation because he was so forward thinking." Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yep. But it's interesting because as we've seen with Daemon, he doesn't care as much because his status has always helped him.
Yep.
He's always been able to get away with a lot because of that. And we kind of...
To be more free and libertine.
Yes, because he, like we were talking about in the very first episode, when he does that move with his like javelin or whatever to the horse, and just gets away with it. And it's not until he comes up against Kristen Cole, who is the better fighter, that he even lost to anyone.
Yep.
Pretty cool. And so, yeah, they have this whole situation. This is clearly a setup for what's coming down the road with them. And so, you know, you get all... This is what you were talking about where, you know, the Knight of Kisses has been kind of watching everybody throughout this whole interaction. And it's so funny because the two of them are not subtle at all.
No.
And I think everyone pretty much knows. Like, everyone who is in sort of a power position in the show is aware of what's going on together with the two of them. Yeah. Especially because they... a lot of the Targaryens probably know his preferences.
Yeah.
Because they grew up with him. Like, he lived in King's Landing for a long time. So, you know, all of the politicking continues. And let's see. Oh, this is the scene. Very pivotal, right? How did you take this? The interaction between the two of them?
I thought it was just more of a I say casual, but just more of a, hey, I'm letting you know I know this. Now you know about me, and we should protect both of our interests. Formal, just very. I didn't find anything necessarily too steeply manipulative about it, other than, you know, hey, let's look out for each other type of deal.
Let's be on
have
the same
this
page.
Yeah, exactly. Let's be allies in this. That's kind of more so how I think.
I think it's either that, because I think I agree with you. I think it's either that or that he was sort of attempting to, like, he's been with Laenor and the Valerians.
I'm still here.
For
Give me a second. I got to turn on my light.
Oh, you're good. I think he's been there for a long time, and there's the potential that this is that moment where, like, he was kind of attempting to play the game, thought he might be able to kind of, like, create an ally, make a friend, and he didn't. He, as we'll see later, does not play this well.
Nope.
Because he doesn't understand the person that he's dealing with, and we as the audience have gotten to see the progression of Kristen Cole through this episode in particular.
See, you don't think that? I mean, clearly with the scene we got, he didn't play it well enough.
Right.
But I thought it was fine. I thought he was just like, hey, I know what's going on. We should both work together in this.
Yeah, I think that,
again, he just doesn't know that Sir Kristen Cole doesn't want to be, you know, the side dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Tyler says in the troll room too that he doesn't think that it was convincing that they put together the relationship so quickly, and I actually kind of agree.
I do agree with that.
They probably had to do it because the next episode is the time jump, and so there's not enough. If there was more time, it probably wouldn't have happened in this episode, because even from what I've seen, this doesn't in the book. This isn't when the situation that's about to occur. It happens later on during the jousting tournament.
Yeah.
But it's fine. Yes, I don't think it would have been possible, but it does sort of, in a way, give a characteristic of the Knight of Kisses that he can kind of figure things out. He's,
quickly.
That the rumor mill, the things that are going on. They know that there is someone that Rhaenyra is interested in, and so he's been trying to figure it out this whole time. Is it the best? Probably not. It's fine enough to get to where we're headed with this. But yeah, minor criticism in the show for sure. I think that there are certain things that they could have spent more time developing, but it's fine.
Yeah. Good story. There's things you're willing to overlook when there's good writing involved.
And that's the thing, is this episode had me like just jacked the whole time. And so, yeah, you're definitely willing to be like, yeah, that does seem a little quick. All right, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
So all of this is going on. I think they're talking.
And then Daemon walks up to her.
Yeah, they're shooting around to all of the different essentially
And
the
it's so
different
smart,
people
too.
that are in those couples, and like,
When
go ahead.
when Damon walks up to her, he takes her and leads her further behind the crowd so that the king and everyone else aren't in full view.
And
they can't hear.
Here it is. Does he? No, I think he just asks to dance with her, right? I don't. Cause that's him. That's old
brother.
Breakbones. So they go. Yeah, you're right. They go out here. And dude, honestly, when I was watching this the first time, I thought that I had missed something.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the part that I was talking about, where they she's basically like, well, if you're gonna take me away, you better kill all the Kingsguard and we'll go, right? Like, she's mocking him.
Yeah.
Then this is the part that I was trying to say that I got a little confused for a second, because this is all going on. He grabs her, right? So this is kind of
on
the
the face too.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what happened. That, Viserys sees what's going on in the middle of everything, and all of a sudden we get a scream, and all of this stuff starts happening. Don't worry, I cut the really brutal
part
out, mostly for YouTube censorship. So everyone's getting pushed around. You're like, and this is why I thought,
Tyler says everything in my body was screaming, no.
Yeah. So I thought I had missed something. I thought that something happened really quick, and I had looked away for a second, and then when I was going back through it, I was like, oh, no. Okay, it was intentional that you're not supposed to know what was going on. Rhaenyra gets pushed to the outside. I think we're, still lots of panic, and then you see Kristen Cole right here, and you're like, oh no. And then my initial reaction was, he's beating the crap out of Daemon.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I thought was happening. Because that, I don't know, I can't remember if he,
he didn't know, I don't think.
I don't think he knew where.
He probably would have heard the rumors.
Possibly. So there's a little ambiguity there.
Yeah.
But I still thought, like, he's been pushed to the edge. He saw that action that Daemon took, and that was it for him.
Yeah.
Turns out that's not the case. Turns out it was the night of kisses, getting absolutely pummeled. And so this is where some of the unknown kind of comes in with the scenario, which is on purpose, clearly.
Yeah.
We don't know why this situation is happening.
Yeah, what happened, what transpired to lead him to attack, or we don't know who attacked who, but assuming it was Sir Kristen Cole who attacked him.
Yep. And so they're fighting. And that's the thing, is like, I don't know if this dagger was pulled ahead of time. Who started the confrontation. There seems to be some evidence that Kristen Cole was at least in
unstable.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, he gets away with this.
Yeah.
And we don't know why.
Which is odd.
It's odd if the scenario is not in his favor in the situation, right? But we just don't know.
Right.
Maybe this was the Night of Kisses pulled his dagger out ahead of time. Kristen told, maybe it was one of those things where, like, the Night of Kisses was attempting to protect Rhaenyra in that situation. Like, he saw what was happening too. Mm-hmm. Goes, because he's supposed to be honorable. I mean, he's the sworn protector of
Laenor.
Laenor, thank you.
Yep.
And so as Laenor's soon-to-be wife, he felt it was his decision to go and do that. Now, I'm speculating. I'm 100% speculating about this. Kristen misinterpreted the situation because, like you were saying, he's a little unstable right now.
Yep.
And maybe that led to somehow the two of them getting into conflict with each other, because it was completely misread.
Yep.
You think we'll find out?
Much like what we were discussing earlier was completely misread from Knew Better, Do Better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll find out in the next episode, possibly.
So yeah, he just gets absolutely
I don't see why
destroyed.
they would do this and not let us know the reasoning.
Lots of panic. This is the part where
Breakbones comes in there.
He just absolutely. Let's see if I can. Yeah, he's just walking through the crowd. Like, again, when we're talking about like the different personalities of the characters, even when they're not saying anything, this is what I'm talking about.
His father's like, go get her.
Yeah, and he's like,
oh, I'm doing it.
Look at this. He just I'm going to slow this down a little bit so people can see this. He just grabs them, right? Gets him out of the way. He's like pummeling dudes. Boom, takes that guy out. And it's constantly going back to Patty, to Viserys, who is just getting worse, and the stress. I think it's trying to imply with a lot of this episode that the stress is getting to him.
Yep.
That it might be
making him sicker.
Mm-hmm. Like the part when he's on the boat. So yeah, they're going through. He picks up Rhaenyra, and we get this scene where he's just absolutely wrecking him. And it's you see the crowd, like everyone is just
like, ugh.
Yep. And some of the main cast can't even see what's going on, right?
Yep.
And just he's absolutely done. Don't worry, I cut it out. And so he pummels his face in, absolutely just destroys him, kills the guy. Everyone,
Laenor
look
cries.
At this guy. I love this guy's expression.
It could be to that guy who were in the troll room. It could be that he was beating him up because he didn't like him and he knew too much already. But the ambiguity is there that you don't. It's up to the viewer to decide what's going on, and because it was, they clearly didn't distinguish what the reasoning was. We're assuming in the next episode somehow we'll come to an understanding of what happened.
Yeah, I think it's subtle on purpose, and I would assume they want you to believe that that's the case because it is the most obvious answer. But we get a time jump after this, and for him to essentially have gotten away with it, if that's the case, there has to be some explanation as to why they were okay with that. Now, there's reasons, because you could say that, for instance, like maybe Corlys wanted him out of the way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not convinced yet that the only reason this happened is just because he didn't like the guy and the guy found out about him and Rhaenyra. Now, was that the ultimate driving force behind why this got instigated the way that it did? And then does Damian know more than he's letting on about the situation? Because we know that Damian is an instigator.
Yeah.
And so maybe he kind of knew what he was doing.
Damian was doing that.
Yeah, he manipulated the situation. I don't know. We'll have to find out. Anyway, that's pretty much it for that.
Then it cuts to the scene of the king falling over, Laenor cries, and then we go. The following scene is the marriage. Yeah,
it cuts between the marriage and Kristen Cole attempting
suicide.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can't.
I was gonna say it's far enough into this. I'm sure it's fine. To unalive himself.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you get the marriage proposal.
Is it okay to say if someone in your family did it? Do you get grandfather then?
Yeah. So we get the marriage, which I think is really interesting because they completely just decided, okay, no 7 days of ceremony before the wedding. We're just going to get the two of them together so we can get this over with. Meanwhile, Kristen Cole is at his lowest, and he is about to end everything. I love you can see like it's just like a peck. No one is happy
just
about
duty.
This. Yep, nobody's happy about this situation at this point. You get a good glimpse of Rhaenyra kind of potentially coming to some understanding that she can't just manipulate people, and that there are actions to her consequences. Yes.
Yep.
Or there's consequences to her actions. Actions to her consequences.
Well, that is true too. There are actions to her consequences.
Yes. So, he's clearly sad because he lost his love, and
Kristen Cole's about to do the whole samurai gutting thing.
I was so into it. I was kind of on the fence.
Like, do it.
Oh no, because he on one hand I was like, oh man, maybe they will. Excuse me, guys. Maybe they will. Just he'll end it, and this will be a rippling effect for Rhaenyra and the decisions she makes going forward. But then the other part of me was like, no, it's so much more interesting if he stays alive. And I'm like, no, don't. I was like, and
I was like, do it.
So you think he's going to, and then you just hear, I think she just says Sir Kristen.
Yeah.
And looks up, and there's Alicent looking at him.
And then
the marriage happens. Viserys falls over.
And then that's it. And man, dude,
you get this shot of the rat drinking the blood of the Night of Kisses, and then they end it. And I think that's such a great spot for all of that.
What do you think that means? That the rat and the blood? What would you speculate?
I think it's more of just sort of that gross indication of how things are continuing to fall apart. Like we've seen. I don't think there's any reason to dig deeper into it.
Yeah.
Or if you want to get speculative about it, maybe the Daemon is sort of like the rat is a representation of Daemon in this scenario, because it's sort of like he's the one who set that up to happen. I don't know. People.
So who do you think is Sauron in this show?
Oh, I don't know.
They're too on the nose trying to make it out to be Daemon. No, but yeah, I really, at the end of that scene when it cut off, I was just thinking to myself, this is the first time in a while I've just been immersed into a show.
Same.
To where I just feel like I'm there and just escaping and enjoying it.
I kept telling myself, I'm like, you don't get too excited. It's like Game of Thrones has hurt you in the past.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, it's not the same. Maybe they've learned from their mistakes. There seems to be an understanding of why everyone hated it.
My wife's messing with me right now. It's just cracking me up. I'm sorry. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't totally know for sure.
Oh man, dude, it's such a great episode.
But
Alicent, Otto, even with Otto, just that brief scene, Daemon, and just the characterization of the series, and it's like you don't want to see him die. That's, even though that's what's leading up to. For me, it was, no, don't die here. So I didn't see the. I keep forgetting they have those trailers of what to look forward to in the next episode. But
yeah, we get a lot of really interesting stuff in there. That was how we got confirmation that Viserys is still alive, because he looks all like decrepit. I want to see if I can find a shot of him. You can show everybody if this wants to.
Yeah, we're not going to break down the.
No. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in there, though, and it got me. Oh yeah, there he is. It got me excited for the next episode.
Is that Hallbrand?
I'm still worried about the. I'm still worried about the switch.
Yeah.
To some of the new actors, but honestly, Laenor's actor, I hope that they switch him out, because I don't think he's very good. I think of all the cast, his dialogue just has been falling flat for me, and I wonder if the showrunners or the directors and everybody running the show kind of knew it, because they don't give him a lot of lines.
Yeah.
He doesn't say a whole lot in the show, and so I'm wondering if they switch that up. But you get some cool images of certain characters' children riding on dragons and training too. So who knows? I would assume this next episode is going to probably be potentially, if I'm speculating, going to be a fan favorite, because there's going to be a lot of dragons in this episode.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be like a decade time jump too.
Yeah. As far as I know, from what I've heard, when Dance of Dragons happens, which is the Targaryen Civil War, Rhaenyra is roughly 35.
Okay.
So we're going to get
that sounds about right.
Yeah, and so we probably won't even get that this season, because this entire season is building up to that. And so I don't know exactly how they're going to handle it, but it should be interesting, man. I really am looking forward to it. Very, very happy with the show.